Howdy readers, I'm Jason. This is Chapter and Verse, and I hate technology. So I was supposed to go live tonight, and the reason I was going to go live was because last night I wasted 3.5 hours of my time shooting, cutting, and trying to upload a video that I then had to delete because it just would not upload. And I've tried twice now to live stream this evening, and that's not working either. So I'm going to treat this video like a live stream. And we're just going to kind of race our way through things. Last night, I was trying to upload a video in honor of my 1-year anniversary on BookTube. Yesterday was the 12-month anniversary of my first upload. And I thought that was a pretty cool thing, a pretty big deal. I've been kind of waiting for it for a few weeks, and then it all got, thrown down the shitter, basically, by Apple's just lovely technology. So basically, what I want to do, all right, in honor of my 1 year on BookTube, is I want people to ask me questions. I'm going to do a Q&A video, and I'm going to answer in the video the first 12 questions that people post in the comment section below. The other questions that people pose that aren't in the top 12, I will still answer with replies, but those won't appear in the video. So ask away, anything you want, really. But I also wanted to just rant about Apple for a minute. I've been having trouble with my iPod lately. It's creating playlists of its own accord for some dumbass reason, including one playlist that has one song on it. And so it just plays that song over and over again. If anybody has any idea why it's doing this, I have never set up a playlist. I've never had any trouble in the past with just playing all of my songs on shuffle. But now I hit shuffle and it plays 12 songs over and over again, and then I go to some other playlist that it has created by itself, and then it plays 5 songs over and over again, and then the third playlist is 1 or 2 songs over and over again. So if anybody has any idea why my iPod is doing that, I'm all ears, because I have tried very hard to figure it out and I can't. Apple likes to think that its products are deeply intuitive, and so they don't include instruction booklets or anything like this. From the beginning of my use of Apple products, I thought that was just bullshit. But, at the same time, I can't really live without the iPad, even though the iPad is causing me a lot of headaches in the last 24 hours as well. So, there's that. I just want to share a few things with you guys tonight. A Mammoth update on 2666. I'm behind in my reading, which I think many of you already know. But I'm in part 4 now, which is good, obviously. But I just wanted to share a few thoughts. So first thought, is there bad writing or pretentious writing in Roberto Bolano's novel? Yes, there is. And one passage in particular that I wanted to share with you appeared on page 9, and it was so early in the book that I found myself really worried that the rest of the novel is going to be just punctuated or littered with really terrible prose like this. But thank God it hasn't been. So the worst writing that I've encountered so far in 2666 is this on page 9. It was raining in the quadrangle, and the quadrangular sky looked like the grimace of a robot, whatever that means, or a god made in our own likeness. The oblique drops of rain slid down the blades of grass in the park, but it would have made no difference if they had slid up. Then the oblique drops, in parentheses, turned round, drops, in parentheses, swallowed up by the earth underpinning the grass and the earth seemed to talk. No, not talk, argue. Their incomprehensible words, like crystallized spiderwebs or the briefest crystallized vomitings, a barely audible rustling, as if instead of drinking tea that afternoon, Norton had drunk a steaming cup of peyote, regardless of the fact that peyote isn't drank in tea. It's eaten as buttons, if my memory serves. So anyway, yeah, I thought that passage was terrible. I could really go without the briefest crystallized vomitings being a phrase that exists in my brain. However, there's a lot more really great writing in the book than terrible writing. And my favorite passage probably so far has been this one on page 212. Of course, he said to himself, he didn't believe in ghosts or spirits, although during his childhood in the south of Chile, people talked about the Mecona, who waited for riders on a tree branch, dropping onto horses' haunches, clinging to the back of the cowboy or smuggler without letting go, like a lover whose embrace maddened the horse as well as the rider, both of them dying of fright or ending up at the bottom of a ravine. Or the Colo-Colo, or the Chonchones, or the Candalilas, or so many other little creatures, lost souls, incubi and succubi, lesser demons that roamed between the Cordillera de la Costa and the Andes, but in which he didn't believe at all, not exactly because of his training in philosophy. Schopenhauer, after all, believed in ghosts, and it was surely a ghost that appeared to Nietzsche and drove him mad, but because of his materialist leanings. So he rejected the possibility of ghosts, at least until he had exhausted other lines of inquiry. So I find that really marvelous prose, actually, and the book has more of that in it than it does really kind of eyebrow-raising prose. There's a dialogue that happens starting on page 265 between a white-haired man who could be a journalist or could be a detective, I can't really tell, and a younger man. It's being eavesdropped on by a reporter who is on his way down to Santa Teresa to cover a boxing match. And this dialogue seems to me to be the hinge on which the book turns. And in this dialogue we see, or we hear rather, the white-haired man talking at length about how people are marginalized, about people who are killed are oftentimes those that society would rather not think about. And so it becomes easy then for society to kind of sweep it under the carpet and not look at it. And what I find fascinating about this is that it feels a little bit like a kind of a form of the hegemony that I've talked about in videos before, right? And the definition of hegemony that my professor in graduate school gave me was basically that if a society gives its citizens enough cheap beer and NASCAR, those citizens will let the society or the kind of governmental machine get away with anything. And where I see hegemony in this book is that we have all of these people who are distracted from what really matters. And what really matters is the epidemic of violence being perpetrated against women in Santa Teresa. These young factory workers, most of them are young factory workers. And in the first section of the book, we have these scholars, right? One of whom, the Italian scholar, reads about these murders in Santa Teresa in an article, but these scholars are navel-gazing in an absurd way, to an absurd degree, and they are just absolutely obsessed with this writer who has consumed their professional lives, and they attend conferences about his work. They put together conferences about his work. They're writing about his work constantly, even when they trace him, right? The scholar who is a recluse, who no one has ever even really seen, but when they trace his movements to Santa Teresa, it doesn't occur to them that he might be there to research the murders, right? They're like, oh, maybe he's researching a book, but they don't know about what. Maybe he's visiting a friend, but they don't know who. And so they're there in the place where these horrors are being perpetrated, and it doesn't even occur to them to involve themselves with it at all, right? One of the scholars, he just spends most of his days sitting by the pool, rereading the books by this writer that they're obsessed with. In fact, at one point, one of the scholars likely sees the writer in a bar, but because he doesn't look the way he expects him to look, he assumes it can't possibly be him. And so anyway, so they're distracted by their kind of academic pursuits. And in the third section of the book, we have this this writer who's down there to write a story about this boxing match. And while he's down there, he learns about the murders and really wants to write about the murders. But his editor won't have it. His editor doesn't think there's any audience for it. He just essentially tells his reporter, write about the match and get your ass back to New York. And so he does. Now, granted, he makes some kind of heroic gesture in helping a young woman to kind of escape that world back to Barcelona. But the fact of the matter is that a boxing match is still more important to the world at large, to the culture at large, to the readership of this magazine. A boxing match is more important somehow than the rapes and murders of these hundreds of women. And so I see hegemony here as distraction, right? So if we can distract people enough, then those people will let anything be permitted, essentially on their watch. And I find that tragic, and I find it disgusting, and I find it sad, and I find it frightening. And the book seems very much to be about that. It seems very much to be, to me, to be an indictment of indifference and how dangerous it is for us to turn a blind eye, to kind of nestle ourselves into the things that make us comfortable or the things that we're interested in, and to refuse to look at what's going on around us. I think the book is uncomfortable reading, to be sure, especially what I've read so far in part 4, but it feels like necessary reading. So, the last thing that I wanted to do tonight, so just earlier this evening, I discovered that one of my favorite contemporary poets, Linda Gregg, whose work I've read on this channel before, died last week of cancer. And so I just wanted to read one of her poems in her memory. If you haven't read Linda Gregg before, her two best collections, in my opinion, are The Sacraments of Desire and Chosen by the Lion. This is a poem from her, I think, 5th collection, Things in Flesh. It's a very good book. It's nowhere near as good as those other two, but it's much better than most of her other books. And this poem is called The Passion. What is death to the man who is already dead? What are cucumbers to him, or the color of the sea? Surely the people God loves most and trusts more are passionate. They listen to the wind in dry, wild grass. They know what is beautiful survives in those who contain the farthest place. It is true that the voice of heaven promises a place without hunger or thirst. But clearly, it is not harmony, peace, or wisdom we see in the face of the risen Christ. It is the carnage of rapture, lovers transformed into glory by the crucifixion of their hearts. And that is Linda Gregg. She was in her mid-70s, so it's not a surprise, I suppose, really. But like I was telling Kelly earlier tonight, I've always just thought of her as never aging, really, from her author photos on the collections that we have of hers. And she's always just seemed kind of goddess-like to me. And it's crazy that the world doesn't have her in it anymore. So anyway, friends, that is my anniversary video and Apple Rant and Mammoth update and Linda Gregg eulogy, I suppose. Let me know if you're reading 2666, what you're thinking of it in the comments below. And don't forget, ask me those questions, the first 12 of which I will respond to in a video in honor of my first year on BookTube. Apologies for the horrible live stream hiccuping, but hopefully this video will upload tonight, and I can sleep without rage kind of boiling through me like molten silver. I will see you guys again very soon. Adios.